Hey, morning everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ryan Daly from the Oceanographic Research Institute up in Durban, South Africa, up on the East Coast. And we're talking about GTs in this part of the world. So for anybody who's ever caught a GT, I don't need to tell you why they're so cool. For everybody else who hasn't, they really are just an iconic predatory fish, growing up to plus or minus 70 kilos. We heard from Jess that they've got trophic level about the same as some shark species. They can live at least 25 years old, and they gonochronistic broadcast spawners, meaning they get together at a certain time of year to spawn. They're also very valuable for recreational fisheries, most importantly. They're also culturally important for many different countries within their range throughout the Indo-Pacific. So we want to know what they do for various different reasons. Just to bring you sort of home for where our study site is, we're down here at Mpekwene, southern Mozambique. Maputo National Park is where a lot of this research originated. The park itself is about 100 kilometers of coastline in southern Mozambique. It's sort of a transitional zone between tropical and temperate ecosystems. It's got these high latitude coral reefs and clean water. The terrestrial part of the park is typically made for the elephants that were left there after the civil war that Mozambique had, and the beach is really important for nesting leatherback and loggerhead turtles. So a lot of the conservation is around the terrestrial component, but the marine protected area side of it is basically in the south for recreational fishers. You're not allowed to catch bottom or reef associated fish species, so you're only allowed to catch pelagic fish species as a recreational fisher. In the north, there are some artisanal fishers that target a range of things, but it's really small. So by and large, the marine environment is I would say, relatively pristine. I've been diving there since 2009 and been back every single year to see this shoal since 2009, however many years that is. But that's something you can't really miss. That's a lot of fish. So in about 2015, we thought, well, we better start to put some numbers to this aggregation. How many fish are there, in terms of both numbers and the size of these fish? So we started out using diver-based stereo video to measure the size of the fish in terms of numbers and size. We basically we did it over multiple years where we'd film multiple aggregations, dozens and dozens, and we'd get the average number of our max N, about 835 fish in that aggregation. If you did a volume sort of count, at least 2,400 fish. All fish are mature. They're matured about 65 centimeter fork length, so you can see the size class. Basically, your median is 80 to 100 centimeters, so all mature. And if you convert that average size and the average number, you get about a 30-ton group of GTs. So it is a significant amount and the largest that I know of in the world. And we're going to speak a little bit about why it's so big. But first of all, we wanted to know, well, are these fish the year round? If they're not there, where do they go? So we started putting acoustic tags in them. 2016 or so, we tagged about 25 at the aggregation site initially, but then Bruce Mann and Rob and others tagged them all along the coast. So south of the Mozambique border primarily. Subsequently, we've also tagged them north of the aggregation in southern Mozambique, and we've had at least 47 tagged, plus now another 20, so quite a few tags swimming around. The aggregation site itself, the little map there is the reef that I mapped. It's about 3.5 k's offshore. It's basically a fossilized sand dune, limestone, sandstone reef. And it's not huge, 600 meters, about 1,000 meters. And the aggregation is pretty predictable every single year. If we look at when exactly the aggregation occurs, basically the first full moon of the summer season is when the GTs come to aggregate. So as soon as the water starts warming up, in our austral summer, it's about October, November, these fish start to aggregate. And the peak in the aggregation is about depending on the timing of the full moon, second or third full moon of the start of the summer season. If you just look at the diagram there, you can see sort of as that red line temperature going up, there's in the middle graph, two very distinct peaks in GT abundance, separated by about a month. It was really cool when we just first plotted that because it's so the data just sort of jumps out at you. So then we plotted lunar luminosity with GT abundance, and again, this is just data. We just plotted it, and it lines up so incredibly. I wish all my data looked like this. On the right, the abundance just grows with lunar illumination. So a conclusion, they are lunatics, like most of us. coming back to why this might be, if you think about the fact that they're gonochronistic broadcast spawners, they all need to be in the same place at the same time. So they've decided this reef is really important. How do they be there at the same time? Well, they use the moon as a cue to all be at the same party at the same time so that they can spawn successfully. Do they migrate? Yes, they do. Every single fish moved significant distances. A lot of the fish seem to have sort of these home ranges that live at over the winter months, but every single GT we tagged went to aggregation no matter where we tagged it. Some fish swam 650-kilometer migrations. Importantly, some fish at the south of their distribution there would be in the south during new moon, would travel up during full moon, 650 k's north, new moon, 650 k's back, full moon, 650 k's north. Seemed to be that the larger fish are much more specific to a few days before and a few days after the full moon. They know how to party. They've done this before. They want to get back to their home range during the new moon, and they want to party hard on the full moon. And the smaller fish seem to hang around, kind of like first full moon, second full moon. They might spend 3 full moons in a row, including the time in between. So it's really interesting potential social cues happening there at the site where the small fish are still learning and the big fish are very specific in terms of their timing at the aggregation to spawn. This is some of the first study that I did. I really thought, well, so what? I mean, like, it's great as scientists to know this data, but what does this mean? Basically, since we first started tagging them, this is a map of our receiver array, largely put together by the ATAP team with Taryn. But we've tagged a lot of GTs up in Bazaruto in northern Mozambique, about 750 kilometers south of the aggregation site. Those GTs don't take part in the aggregation. They do their own thing. But every single fish tagged in South Africa, no matter where, comes to Mozambique to spawn. So that's got major implications in terms of management. There's a need for transboundary cooperation and management. Even if South Africa, we love the fish the most, we want to do everything we can, it's up to Mozambique to protect this. So we need to collaborate, we need to talk to our neighbors, and this is a theme that I've discussed with several people with Canada and America, shared countries, the need for transboundary management and cooperation. We're really lucky that we've been working with the sort of champion of the marine protected area there and sharing our information with them over 12 years, but it hasn't just been easy to turn what we found into regulations. I would say over 12 years of working with the same managers, we've finally been able to, in 2023, able to turn our science into regulation. That regulation was just really interesting because the manager first said, well, this is so important for us and for the whole of South Africa, let's just close it off to fishing. Put a big circle on the map around this reef and say, no fishing for GTs. And then we're like, well, but then everybody's going to say, well, look at this place on the map. I want to go fish for GTs there. We heard about those 10% that Judy told us about this morning. They're going to go and fish them, but it also becomes really vulnerable, especially for the commercial sector. 30 tons of GTs is worth a lot of money. So we thought, let's think about this for a few years. It took us a few years to really try to tie down what we thought would be effective, speaking with Bruce and Rob and many other people as well that contributed to the idea of what would work in terms of regulations, and we eventually decided on a seasonal closure, but not a seasonal closure on the capture of them, a seasonal closure on the targeting of GTs. Why is this important? Because, next, and go, because the sharks also like it there, and unlike many of the other GT fisheries we've heard about in Seychelles that are worth a lot of money recreationally, if you hook a GT there, the shark eats it, basically, because the bull sharks there are so cued into the timing of the GTs being at the aggregation. So if you had to say the bag limit's 1 per person per day, you might lose 20 to sharks before you can land 1, or you might never land 1. So a bag limit's not going to be effective because of the depredation. But unlike that other talk we heard about in this venue previously, the sharks have always been eating fish there. So it's not like fishers were ever catching a lot of GTs and then all of a sudden the sharks showed up and then there was this depredation issue. The sharks have always been there. You always lost GTs to sharks. So it's just accepted that's what happens. So the next challenge is, I guess, enforcement. It's been since 2023 we've had a regulation of no targeting the GTs during this vulnerable period. But some people still do, because targeting is a bit of a loose word. I'm happy to discuss that more. You're saying, well, I'm not targeting GTs, but they do take almost any lure, So it's more about not disturbing the shoal and not allowing these depredation events to happen, because they are very vulnerable when they're spawning. But again, coming back to the importance of the aggregation, the entire South African fishery for GTs relies on this one aggregation site. Going forward, it's continuously evolving. We just tagged a whole lot of GTs now in December with Fabian. So we're looking at fine scale spawning aggregation dynamics. We just put out a lot of depth tags and accelerometer tags and a new receivers and new technology. We want to know more about what they do at the aggregation site. We also want to know what's the northern limits of the aggregation draw. So we've gone 100 kilometers north, about 120 kilometers north. Every single GT tag there still goes to the aggregation. Where does that barrier end? So we want to tag more in that gap. We also want to monitor regulation effectiveness. We constantly chat to the manager about it, but there is not really an enforcement at the moment, but no one really does target them at the moment, like mainly because of the sharks. But we need to really keep on top of this because things evolve, things change all the time. So we're definitely committed to going back every year. I think it'll be the 17th year I was back there now in a row. So I'm going to be back again next year and forevermore, as long as I can go. But we also have a really cool regional collaboration now with Taryn and the team. We've got a West Indian Ocean regional project where we're collaborating on genetics, tagging, looking at GTs throughout their West Indian Ocean range in terms of what they do differently. We've tagged them in Seychelles, but we'd love to collaborate more with others doing this in the region and globally to look at regional and global variation. So thanks so much. Yeah, we'd love to know. We've actually dropped the ball in terms of our gender identification now. Just speaking to Jess about some molecular techniques to identify gender, and this is key to future research as well, because we don't know.
Do you know if females get larger than males?
I don't know for sure, yeah.
How are you tagging the fish to avoid the sharks?
Yeah. To catch them and tag them, you select smaller ones by nature, because you can just land them so much faster. But there are some days where, for some or other reasons, the sharks are not so on it. So we would, over many years, you'd get down a day and you'd catch one fish and it would just get eaten in 5 seconds flat. You would stop fishing for them. We'd try another day. Some other days, the sharks are quieter. But there are different methods, like surface versus jigging seems to be a bit more effective to just get them up and on the boat so quickly. And then just different fishing techniques. You've caught GTs before. I mean, it's just sometimes you can be faster and better, but it's not fun fishing. I mean, it's like panic stations. Get the GT in the boat, yeah.